United States, I was shocked to be invited by DARPA to come in and present my life's work. I was like, what is the innovation arm behind the DoD want to know about me and what I've been focused on? Apparently, distributed collaborative value chains are so important that even the US DoD is looking at them. So they recognize that this is critical to national infrastructure, and that I pointed out to them little things like Shein and Temu drop shipping packages directly from China into US homes, 1 million packages a day without any taxes, tariffs, or inspections. What could possibly go wrong? You know, if they put a pathogen in there, bloodless World War III. Believe you me, everyone at DARPA paid attention. Things like recognizing that fibers are critical infrastructure. Everyone is investing in chip manufacturing and electric vehicle batteries. And I said, that's fantastic, but what happens if you can't get the 25 cents of fire retardant fibers that need to encase that electric vehicle battery? It goes boom, and then you have nothing. So we cannot look at our systems and value chains as individual components. They have to be looked at and understood as end-to-end. And with that, I invite Lisa McAlinden to talk about orchestration of collaborative value chains. She is from Spring East Manufacturing. Yes. Grab a mic.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Well, with that, I was connected to Lisa through a company I've been working with for about 2 years out of India. They're called PDS Limited. Has anyone in this room heard of PDS Limited? Maria, oh, one other person. I like to say they're one of the biggest fashion manufacturing supply chain companies that nobody's ever heard of. And they kind of like it that way.
They do. And I think supply chain is one of those things that, you know, supply chain isn't often invited to the conversation. So I think where sustainability is coming more to the forefront and supply chain is so important at that, they are sort of marketing themselves more and bringing that more to the forefront. But I can just explain a little bit about PDS. It's a $2 billion a year business. It has 50 different group companies that are in the PDS ecosystem. It's very unusual in the way that it operates. Harvard Business School's done case studies on it. We're the only company globally that operates in the way that it does. People first is one of its core values, and with that also entrepreneurial spirit. So it invests in entrepreneurs rather than acquiring companies, so invest in people, and I think that's really at the heart of what we do. So in terms of global supply chain, we have sourcing offices in India, Bangladesh, China, offices in America, you know, South America, pretty much everywhere globally. I work for the Near East arm of the business, so we're Spring Near East, so we predominantly work out of Turkey and North Africa, and I head up the design office and the sustainability for our 200 plus factories within our value chain.
Wonderful. Well, to touch a little bit more upon just how important I feel PDS is, they not only invest in existing manufacturing infrastructure without taking them over, they upgrade hardware, software, reskill workforces, and take a minority equity stake in each factory. They have hundreds of factories across India, Southeast Asia, Europe. And they also manage about, 300 or so brands?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a self-contained end-to-end digital layer across the entire textile and apparel value chain that is non-extractive or exploitative. So I became aware of them when one of my girlfriends, Sandra Campos, who was the CEO of Diane von Furstenberg, introduced me to them a couple of years ago. She's on their board. And when I first saw them, I said, oh my God, this is the company that I would love to have created if I had billions of dollars to deploy. But truly, they walk the walk. And I would love for you to talk about, first of all, what your background is and how you got involved with them, and then the types of work that you're doing today.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background was in design. I started life as a fashion designer, specifically a knitwear designer. So I have a very technical mind, creative mind. I worked on the retail side of the business for the first 6 years of my career. And then I moved to supply chain after that. And then I was introduced to Spring Near East, which was a startup at the time. So PDS was investing in our founder at the time. So we were a startup. This was 15 years ago. So there was me as the only designer in the UK and 12 people in the office in Istanbul. And today we're 25 designers and 150 people in the office in Istanbul. So you can see the kind of growth that we've had in that 15 years. I'd say because we were a startup, we still have that startup mentality. Near East production means, we talk about nearshoring, we talk about closer to home, we talk about agility, being able to, really just buy the products that you absolutely need. And that's what we do in abundance. So, you're not having to make those big decisions up front, going to the Far East, you're keeping it much, much closer to season so that you're truly having a more sustainable business model.
Yeah. You, during our prep call, you told me about you would teach these sustainability courses to different corporations. And I said, that's fantastic. What happened afterwards? Was it everyone was like, ooh, this is wonderful, and then they went home and it sort of went in one ear and out the other? How do you approach teaching companies how to adopt better sustainable practices?
Well, first of all, why we came to the why of why we needed to have these educational workshops, as we saw, again, what I was saying, that retailers were at these big conferences making decisions. Yeah, we're on the Sustainable Fashion Board, Circularity Board, but actually without your supply chain, you can't action any of this. And so we've got a fantastic supply chain. We've got solar power factories. We have, rain that's been recycled back into the system. And a lot of our customers, we're doing all these things, but they're not actually fully aware of it. So we actually wanted to have these educational workshops to make our customers aware of what they actually have access to. And actually then they can take these tangible actions to really hone in on the most sustainable parts of their already existing value chain. So the first workshop we did was for one of the biggest supermarkets in the UK called Sainsbury's. We had such a fantastic response. There was 280 people joined from their global offices, so from Hong Kong, India, in the UK, all over. And we did a 2-day workshop where we really tried to hit home about these supply chain strategies that they could take tangible actions on. And one of them was to redesign some of their products to be fully circular. So we helped them to map what their ecosystem was, to map, what stages of the production that they had and how they could make better decisions at each stage of the production so that they could then take some of these forward into pilot stage. Because I've been involved in conversations and workshops in the past where you do these presentations, everyone's really excited, and like you said, nothing really happens afterwards. So we wanted to make sure that the workshop included those tangible actions at the end.
I call that sustainability theater. And there's diversity theater, there's innovation theater, where everyone has all these performative actions and nothing actually happens afterwards.
Yeah.
So you work with brands to orchestrate their end-to-end value chains. How do you get brands to understand the sort of chicken and egg? Like you want sustainability, but you don't want to, they assume everything's going to cost more and it's going to take longer and you're going to stifle my creativity and my design team's creativity. How do you get them over that hump and realize that there's opportunity?
Yeah, there is opportunity, and sustainability doesn't always have to cost more money. So I think one of the examples that I gave Lisa when we had a chat was there was a graphic T-shirt that we ran, millions of pieces every year. And, I have a sustainability team in my office in Turkey and a data analyst. And we got him to run some analysis on our solar power factory versus the factory in the same region producing the same garment. And we worked out per garment that there was an 11% saving in carbon. So with that data, we then went back to the customer and said, look, this is a factory already in your system. How about we say we can take on more capacity, we can do more business with you, we can give you upfront production plans. And what we managed to do is not only lower their impact overnight, we got them a better price, we got them a better service because they became more important to that factory. So I think that's a really good example of where you can use your supply chain to make better strategies, but it takes that collaboration, it takes that upfront planning, and you really need to engage with everyone in your ecosystem to make it happen.
Yeah, you also mentioned that the C-suite is not usually incentivized to do hard things. They like to do the performative stuff. So who needs to be involved to actually get things done?
Everyone. You have to involve all of your stakeholders, and the fact that I'm still sitting in the design arena positions me perfectly because my stakeholders are the heads of buy-in, they're the heads of design, they're the CEOs, they're the decision makers. But when we talk about something like designing for circularity, it's not just the designers that are making those design decisions. Every single person that's involved in those processes needs to be a designer. And so, when we talk about orchestrating of value chains, it's really orchestrating every single stakeholder that makes it possible.
Yeah. So most huge brands that I have worked with in New York, it's like they've become so distanced from the concept of production that they're just the front end, as Frederick said. They just ideate. And then the back end handles all of the unfun stuff. But obviously they need to collaborate together, and you need to be aware of how to cross that bridge. How do you work with stakeholders to teach them the importance of you can't just throw it over the hurdle to your factory and then assume they'll make it sustainable and deliver?
Exactly. And I think the challenge here is, there is a challenge within the fashion industry that, in order to get a lot of these things over the line, you need to form relationships. And those relationships and those human connections that you have with people are really important at getting this over the line. We're talking a lot about digitization, a lot about AI, use it for waste reduction, use it for fixing faults, but actually the thing that you can't replace is that human connection. When I'm going out to Istanbul and, I barely spend any time in our office. I'm in the factory, I'm on the factory floor, I'm talking to the workers, I'm talking to the owners, I'm asking them about their children, about their lives, about, what's going on. They're asking the same. It's really forming those human connections is really important to doing business and making things happen, because when I say I've got this really tough circularity pilot that I want to deliver, they're like, yeah, no problem, Lisa, we'll do it. We'll do our best to do it. What we've seen in recent years with COVID, your buyers aren't travelling, designers aren't travelling. So I've got senior buyers and buyers who haven't even stepped inside a factory. And believe me, they have the egos to match the title. So they're making big decisions, but they don't understand about production and people's livelihoods.
Yeah. That's why when I asked earlier how many of you have actually been in factories, I was so excited to see that the majority of you have, because that is rare, honestly, and truly shocking that we have evolved this industry to become so disconnected. But at the same time, we are talking about digitalization. And of course, digitalization has disconnected us more than it has connected us in other aspects of our lives. So how do we keep that trust and relationship core that is foundational to supply chains? Because as we all learned during COVID, if you didn't have a personal relationship with your factory and if you treated them like garbage, they were like, who dis? Good luck with what you need. How do you foster those relationships in this time of disconnect where everyone wants to be hands off and just say, handle it for me? I think that is one of the sides of this industry that I personally love. And I think that supply chains in particular, you can't just bro your way with technology into the space. You need to acknowledge the human factor.
Absolutely. And the human factor also involves things like finance. When a lot of our customers are moving to things like 90 days payment terms, like even as a nearshore supplier, that's pretty tough to buy your raw materials, to buy all of that upfront. So, a company like Spring Near East and PDS, what we also offer is finance. So we'll finance our factories upfront to make sure that they can make those goods in time for their customers. Yeah. And that's how we deliver that piece for our customers, and we keep a good reputation within the market. When COVID happened, we made sure all of our suppliers were paid. We made sure, because at the end of the day, it's people's lives, it's people's families, and in order for us to operate in this arena, we need to make sure that they survive.
Yeah, the financing side, I'll share a little personal anecdote. In the States, I was in North Carolina a little over 2 months ago, speaking at the Southern Textile Association conference in front of about 100 or so factory owners in North Carolina. And it was before the tariff announcements. And these factory owners were so excited about digitalization and collaboration and investment in their infrastructure and hoorah, let's do this. And then the tariffs hit. And those same factories that have been around for 40, 80, 100 plus years managed to stay in business through all of the abandonment of our industry in the United States. They suddenly were saying, we're not going to be able to survive. Not just the tariffs, but it's the compounding issues that nobody is really understanding are impacting these small businesses. I didn't even understand that our U.S. government is a huge provider of baseline orders for our U.S. manufacturing because of the Berry Amendment. You have to produce military goods, uniforms, et cetera, in the United States. So during COVID, that ramped up. And everyone started increasing their orders and factories were fat again. And then COVID dissipated and the orders started to dissipate and they started seeing, well, we could technically get away with getting our textiles overseas and have it shipped to US factories to convert, and it's still considered made in the USA. So as more and more orders started leaving again, the banks started recognizing that these factories were having month over month declining revenue and started calling back loans. And so it's like this perfect storm for a mass extinction event of this industry that has managed to stay alive. So I'm personally excited that PDS is looking to expand into the Americas because I think the time is now. Are you working with any of the expansion team? I know that there's a couple that are in the US.
In terms of what I work on personally within the PDS group, we have a PDS Ventures arm of the business, so it's the investment arm. So personally, I work with a lot of the innovators. We use a lot of tech, in terms of DPPs, doing pilots and things like that. But certainly raw material innovators is where I would sort of come in. And I use them a lot in my educational workshops as ways of like, here's a solution. We can then embed this into our supply chain. And again, PDS is investing in some fantastic technologies. But again, the biggest challenge that I'm seeing at the moment is there's so much money at startup stage. A lot of these innovators are creating these solutions, but then when they want to take it to scale, the money just isn't there. So again, PDS, what we do is if we really believe in an innovation, we can take a binding LOI and commit to sort of 3 or 4 years of taking a fibre or taking an innovation make sure that then goes into our value chain. But it's certainly a challenge, and some of the innovators that I've worked with have gone under or have had to reevaluate how they work. So I think money is plays a big factor in what we'd like to see in coming years. Is there's more money to scale some of these technologies.
Yeah, for sure. Have you been to, since you're working in materials, I would assume you've been to Positive Materials, the PDS. Yeah. Talk a little bit about Positive Materials, what it is for this audience.
So Positive Materials is a really exciting fibre and fabric producer. They're predominantly working out of Portugal. And they had, you might have seen them at Premier Vision. What they did is they took a lot of the technologies and the innovators that PDS were working with. So, for instance, Evernew, where they were working on next gen fibre innovations, taking post-consumer waste cotton and creating new fibre with it by not cutting a single tree down to make cellulose, and also tackling waste at the same time. And then even things like lab-grown dyes. So they were taking lots of these innovations and combining them into fabric so that then we could then take that to market. So really, really exciting space and some really cool stuff.
So orchestration of value chains, I feel like it's become a forgotten lost art because I'll share that China, frankly, has been, I've thought for a long time, engaging in long-term warfare by deindustrializing the rest of the world. And I don't know how many of you follow the Asia Times, but in December, they put out an article that actually stated as such, that China has been engaging in long-term warfare by having the state subsidize the development of their manufacturing industry, the development of their raw materials, the design, sourcing, product development, sampling at no cost to their customers, because then anytime any brand wants to produce anywhere else in the world, they're like, well, why aren't you giving me all that for free? China does. So it's a really tough thing to get out from under for the rest of the world when everyone has been taught that the way China does things is the way it should be done. How does PDS mitigate that assumed free business? I know that factories in the United States are struggling with that. I personally have. When brands started reaching out to me and asking for reshoring, they were asking for me to help them basically orchestrate and plan and design a whole new regional value chain, which could take 6 months to a year at zero cost until they maybe decide they want to do a production run. And for that, I can get a small percentage of whatever order they finally place. I was like, no, I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. So how does PDS work with that set of expectations?
I mean, the expectations there for sure, and I don't think it's just from China. Obviously I'm predominantly working out of Turkey, and the expectations absolutely there as well, where, and especially a company of our size, we not only have to deliver the product, we're doing the design, we're giving the whole package end to end. Customers are coming to our showroom, selecting our designs, then we're giving them the prices, the production, absolutely everything to go along with it. So buyers are really in a position where they can cherry pick and call a lot of the shots. Where the challenges come in is obviously when there's economic challenges and market fluctuations. In Turkey at the moment, we've had 2 wage increases in the last year. So where there would have been fabric on the floor constantly just to be able to deliver and churn for customers, that's no longer there because it's a big outlay. So we have to then communicate with our customers that, in the past we could turn a sample round in a couple of days for you. At the moment, no, we can't. Our sample lead times have to increase to 2 to 3 weeks because of fabric, because of this. So I think in those circumstances, I think communication is really key in helping them to understand the challenges that you might be facing in the supply chain, because it is fluctuating week to week. there's major changes going on. So making the customer aware of that is really key. Otherwise, they just expect it. And without that communication, they will just move to someone else if they're not getting the service.
I think with crisis comes massive opportunity. And what I'm seeing is that brands are starting to realize the importance of booking long-term commitments with factories, basically booking capacity rather than just one-off projects. And I'm hopeful that becomes more and more the norm. All right, thank you.
Thanks.